were up there for like 10 seconds.
10 seconds is an eternity, Harry. It's a third of the way to Mars.
Connor, we've talked about this. 30 Seconds to Mars is the name of a band. It's not a fact.
If you've seen any film that leaves our atmosphere for the cosmic drama of outer space, you're likely to have heard this expression.
Come on, people, let's work the problem.
Come on, guys, keep it together, work the problem.
Coined by former NASA flight director Gene Kranz, you'll remember him as this guy here, it encapsulates the efficiency and steely resolve that makes space exploration so inherently heroic. The practical application of high-minded intellect, problem solving at its most urgent, calm under unimaginable pressure. If you can communicate all of that in 3 simple words, imagine what you can say with the next big step on our road to exploring the cosmos. This big red planet, rendered with all the tools at Hollywood's disposal, and given life by characters undertaking the most unprecedented scientific endeavour in history. With so many seeds to be plucked from the heavens and grown into something extraordinary, why does Hollywood have such a hard time with Mars?
Let's work the problem, people.
What do all the following, each released theatrically within my lifetime, have in common? 1. They all prominently feature Mars as a destination, point of origin, or setting, and 2. They all absolutely tanked. Mars' failure to make an impression on screen has got to the stage where major studios are so scared of the Roman god of war, they're going out of their way to hide any reference to it in their publicity materials. According to director Andrew Stanton, a Princess of Mars became John Carter of Mars because not a single boy would go if the original title remained. After that incredibly gross reasoning, its name was further shortened to John Carter out of fear that no girls would want to see a motion picture with the word Mars anywhere near it. Tactless and reductive though their logic may be, it's hard to ignore that in 30 years, there have only been 3 commercially successful major releases in the West that broach the subject of Mars, while the rest are doled out in limited runs, consigned to straight-to-DVD oblivion, or tossed on the scrap heap with all the other box office bombs. It's a strange phenomenon. Even those with the most rudimentary understanding of our solar system know what Mars is, so what makes it such a tough sell? Well, it seems that very ubiquity is part of the problem. As Screen Rant recently discussed in their article on the subject, for the first 2/3 of the 20th century, Mars still held the allure of the unknown. Even as we made giant leaps for all mankind, B-movies and big thinkers were pondering the endless possibilities within the big red planet. Once the science caught up with science fiction, however, atomic age speculation about the 4th stop from the sun and its little green inhabitants stopped holding any threat or intrigue. Suspension of disbelief had been usurped by what suddenly seemed very silly. Arriving 100 years too late, by the time Disney wrapped production on their version of John Carter in 2010, all the good parts had long since been appropriated by just about every iconic high fantasy science fiction hybrid that preceded it. John Carter wound up looking like an imitation of its imitators, long after the public interest in the planet had started to wane. As Craig Elvey states, invaders were no longer coming from Mars, humans were heading towards it. Now, appearances aren't everything, but in the case of Mars, the uncanny similarities between most portrayals of it certainly don't help with the wow factor. A lot of these films look exactly the same. This copy and paste aesthetic template is simple enough to explain, and just like piano rock stalwarts Something Corporate on their 2002 single, Jordan is to blame. Hooray for niche jokes that about 6 people will understand. See all these versions of Mars you're looking at right now? They were all shot in southern Jordan, where a place called Wadi Rum is frequently used as a stand-in for the Martian surface. The problem being, now that everybody uses it for the same thing, its once distinctive geography has started to feel blasé. Now you may be saying to yourself, what about the moon? That's just a whole lot of monochromatic emptiness, and you're not complaining about that. The key difference is, whether you realise it or not, each of us has formed an attachment to that celestial body throughout our lives living beneath its chalky glow. There's a nostalgia there even if we don't really think about it. The view from the moon allows us a humbling perspective of our pale blue dot, a silent glance at everything we've ever had, and everything we'll ever be. By comparison, every shot of Mars kind of looks like the start of Mission Impossible 2, but without stunt Jesus Tom Cruise doing his thing all over the place. After so many iterations on Mars that barely move the needle either way, it's hard not to get fatigued by endless horizons of rocks and sand. Rather than trusting that a group of humans strapped to a rocket and hurtled 140 million miles away from their nearest lifeline is enough of a backbone for tension and sustainably engaging stories, often these movies resort to contrived and increasingly hokey attempts at upping the ante. Red Planet takes a different, fun mystery, what if you landed on Mars and it had a breathable atmosphere, and decides to introduce a crazed, murder-hungry robot into the mix. The Last Days on Mars turns into a zombie yawnathon, and Mission to Mars wound up working better as a Futurama episode. Whether they intended to or not, these laboured introductions of external antagonistic forces neuter any real suspense, especially when you're arguing that a metal dog is more dangerous than a place where doing absolutely anything will probably kill you. For comparison, look at how well Apollo 13 keeps us on tenterhooks, even though history tells us everything works out just fine in the end. Finite resources, a ticking clock, nothing but some tin foil in a floating can between life and certain death. We're given characters to care about, clear problems with complex solutions, and honest conviction in a setting that serves as more than wallpaper for what's happening in the foreground. To this end, when trying to comprehend failure, it's helpful to understand the means of success.
Get your ass to Mars.
The Martian came out in the wake of all of these misfires and was a blockbuster hit despite the M-word. No aliens, no techno-fear, no space dementia. It respects the science it sets out to celebrate. Well, except for the terrible ending that threw in all that Iron Man bullshit.
You idiots!
Beyond that, the marketing was clear enough to engage fresh eyes and excite fans of the original book, while the creatives behind it made the smart decision of boiling their mission statement down to "Castaway if it was further away than we'd ever been." As for the other two mainstream examples that managed to conquer Mars, they're all incredibly distinct from one another. A hyper-violent journey that may well be taking place in Arnie's scrambled brain, a cackling B-movie throwback with a stellar cast, and a new addition to the rescuing Matt Damon subgenre. All three were directed by seasoned veterans firing on all cylinders, and working with treatments based on pre-existing intellectual properties with built-in audiences that helped bolster their critical and/or cult appeal long past their theatrical release window. So why do so many of these other entries crash and burn? Well, without meaning to undo my arguments up to this point, maybe this is all overthinking it. At the start of this video, I asked what each of these has in common, but I missed out on the most obvious reason they failed to launch. They're all kind of bad. To gauge a rough critical consensus, the Rotten Tomatoes scores for each of these films works out at a flaccid 24%, and even then, that's tipped up the way by the strangely mixed critical reception the terrible John Carter received. I mean, I have a soft spot for Mission to Mars, and plenty of films have made a ton of cash despite a pummeling from the press, but mix these icy receptions with their flavourless presentation, add in an uneasy audience and a complete absence of awe at what spectacle there is to be seen, it's no wonder they failed to get off the ground. Trends and tastes come in fits and starts, going from everywhere to nowhere faster than I can keep up. I don't think a spate of disappointments means the end of Mars on our screens. With over 55 million miles of barely tapped potential to work with, I still think there's plenty of ground left to cover. A rousing speech for our Patreon producers Jennifer C., Claire MD, Becky O, and Nicholas Lair-Revere, and all systems go to these lovely people on the screen right now who help support the channel. Why do you think we're not getting our ass to Mars as much anymore? What are your personal favourite films, books and video games centred around the big red lad himself? Let us know in the comments, and as always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video and leave us a message, and if you'd like to go the extra mile, consider sharing this video all over the internet, or checking out our Patreon at the link in the description below. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time, this is In Frame Out.